All right, hello everybody. Getting ready to go live here on Instagram as well, so it'll take a second, but we're going to talk about how to nature journal leaves. A lot of times people overthink nature journaling, but it doesn't have to be that hard. And why Okay, so one of the great things about leaves is it's a good starting place if you don't know what subject to choose. And also, if you live in the northern hemisphere, leaves are very popular this time of year because they're changing colors. So, we'll talk about all of that. Even if you're not in the northern hemisphere, we will give you some options as well and some tips and tricks for getting started. So, the first thing is sometimes making your choice of what you're going to nature journal is the hardest part. So you just need to choose something and get started. And sometimes just going and choosing any old leaf that you can find and starting there is perfect. And we'll just start with that and show how basic it can be. Then I will go through a list that I have here with a bunch of different tips and tricks, but let's just pretend like all we had was one little leaf, and we'll go with this one right here. It does have some interesting colors, but we won't get too overwhelmed by that. I'll also talk about this, which is botanically a leaf, in a second, but let's put all of those other things to the side there and just start with something simple and pretend like this was all that we had, and we just want to do some quick nature journaling. Let's just dive right into it and not overthink it. So, one thing that I could do is I could just do a blind contour drawing of it, and without even picking up my pen, just try to follow along the outside of the contour here and just kind of get like a quick one off outline of it. That would be one step. And we'll also talk about how words can play a really important part here. And I'm going to look a little bit at the venation. So now that I've got this basic outline, I'm going to try to see if I can tell if the veins are opposite of each other. Another thing is I'm noticing the leaf looks really different on different sides. So what I can do is make a little arrow here, flip it over, and show, and now I'm going to draw the other side. And even if I don't have any color, like watercolor and stuff like that, what I can do is I can just write that this side, what do I notice? It's not glossy on this side. So this side is glossy. And now I'm going to show you how words can be a really easy way to add some information here. This is almost like a joint comparison between the two different sides of the leaf. So I'm going to write top up here. Here's a good chance to use some fun um, bubble letters. So I'll write top. And what you'll see is this combination of quick sketches and words and arrows, it takes a lot of pressure off the drawing and it ends up creating a nice aesthetic whole. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that is a very empowering concept when you're drawing and nature journaling because it takes pressure off of each individual drawing. So the top is glossy, bottom not glossy. What else do I notice? The colors are strong on top and dull underneath. Dull colors. What else? They feel different. Actually, they feel pretty similar on both sides to the touch. And the veins are alternating, so that's important, and I can see it better on the bottom. So this is the kind of thing that's it's there's certain things you can fake when you're drawing, something from nature, and there's other things that are best not to fake. And the venation is something that's best not to fake. It's best to draw the venation based on direct observation of the actual leaf, because the type of venation is important. So in this case, it is alternate venation, and that's the same on both sides. And now, instead of doing the color, I'll talk about painting color in a second, but right now I'm just going to write cool colors. Cool, and I'll put that in parentheses because I'm not talking about warm and cold, because it's actually warm colors, but they're cool as in they look neat. So check out how easy that was, just to show you, if you only had 5 minutes to nature journal, you could do this right here. And so that's one of the things about nature journaling a leaf, is that if you only had 5 minutes and you could just find one leaf, it could even be from a house plant or from a salad mix in your refrigerator, you could do what we just did right there. And I think that would be worthwhile. So that's one of the cool things about nature journaling a leaf, is it's very accessible. You don't have to go to some kind of wilderness area to do this. Now we're going to get into a little bit more detail. So for those of you that are more advanced, hold your horses. We will be going into some more complex stuff here, and we do have some other cool leaves standing by. Some of them are a little bit too advanced, and we'll talk about that because that's really important. So now that we know how easy it is to get started, I'm just going to write getting started here. Now that we know how easy it is to get started, let's go a little bit more into detail into fall leaves, because fall or autumn leaves is something that, for people that live in the northern hemisphere that are a good ways up in latitude in the northern hemisphere, fall leaves is something that is a big deal this time of year. And if you live in the tropics, or you live in the southern hemisphere, this won't really be the case for you right now. But if you live in the southern hemisphere, it's the spring, and you could save this information for the fall. If you live in the tropics, it might not be as significant, but you can just bear with us here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of this coloration. These 3 leaves right here are from persimmons, and this is from a strawberry guava. And what you can see is there's a lot of these oranges and reds and maybe even pinks and yellows going on. And this is really visually stunning, and it makes a big visual impact this time of year. So let's look at some of these leaves, because they're really fun to nature journal. And one thing I want to talk about now, and it will come up again later, is complexity. These leaves can be intimidatingly complex, so we have to be careful how much we bite off, because if you get into all of these venations and all of this blotching, it could be really maybe more than you want to bite off. So one way to deal with that is to choose a smaller leaf. None of these leaves are huge, but choosing a smaller leaf, and then also, in addition to size, is choosing what level of resolution you want to show. So let's just start with the easiest and sort of build our way up if we can. So we're going to actually start with that same leaf that we were looking at before. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a blind contour drawing of it. So you can work from the same leaf as me if you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm not even going to look at my drawing. I'm just going to look at the leaf and try to draw it without even picking my pen up from the paper and not looking at my drawing. And this is just a way to sort of take the pressure off of the drawing. And look, it didn't even line up at all. So That's not actually going to work. But the good thing is if the instructor does a really crappy one and then it makes you feel like this is something that's doable. So I'll do a couple of these, and this is a good example of how doing multiples of something takes the pressure off of the individual drawing. Maybe a modified blind contour drawing where you look occasionally at the drawing is the best option here. So we got that in. Now I'm going to start being a little bit more careful and just kind of get this mid rib. I think that's called the rachis, which is the same term as in feathers. And we'll get into the color right away. So one strategy for the fall colors could be to actually completely separate the colors from the drawing and just do swatches. You could use colored pencils, but this is definitely one of those places where I think watercolor is the obvious best option. And even if you just have the primary colors, you could mix some pretty good fall colors. And what we can do right now is we can just do a sort of swatching out of the colors without even painting them into our actual drawing. And by separating the color and the drawing, that can kind of make it a little bit less intimidating, especially if you have a small amount of time, a small amount of energy, or a small amount of experience. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this leaf very carefully, and I'm going to start with, are there any yellows in this? There's not really any yellows. Not very much. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my, let's see. It's not, I'll see what the closest color is. I'll start with the colors there's the most of. How about that? So I'm seeing something that looks quite a bit like what in my palette is, this is quinacridone sienna, and it's sort of like a rusty red color. And what I'll do is I'll just make these little swatches here as like test swatches and put the leaf close to them and see how close I can get to that color. And I will use my little paper towel here to remove some pigment and make these swatches get a little bit more faded so I can show a spectrum of them. And what you'll see is, if you've done stuff with me before, you already know this, but this is a really great way to create a cumulative aesthetic effect that's actually looks cool without there being any one drawing that's actually very strong by itself. So I think these swatches actually look very cool, and they're also a good way to, little by little, with a very low pressure, start learning about the colors on this leaf. Now I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try something a little bit different and go straight to this green and see what's the closest match to that green I can do. And I think in my palette, this Serpentine Genuine, which is a yellowish green, I think that will probably be pretty close. I can also make notes here about which pigments I'm using. So I'll write QS for quinacridone sienna. And now I'm going to go, maybe I'll go in another spot up here. I feel like that's a direct hit. So this Serpentine Genuine to me looks like an exact, basically an exact match. Let me move my camera closer. How good are these colors? These colors are good enough. Let me adjust my light slightly. I definitely recommend not doing this from photos and doing this from real life leaves if you can. For right now, it's fine to practice from my leaf if that's all you have, but if you can find a leaf nearby, that's even better. Even houseplants could work for this. So that's Serpentine Genuine, and I think that it looks best at almost the full strength, but let's dilute it a little bit here and see what we get. If you're working from primary colors, it will take you a little bit longer to get to these colors that I'm working with, or an approximation of them, but that's fine. So that's Serpentine Genuine, and that to me looks really close to the green that I see in there. Now, are there any intermediary colors? It looks like there's some sort of brownish colors, which might be where the green and the red overlap, and there might be some spots that are a little bit more intense red than what I see there. So let's go ahead and paint these colors into the leaf and see what we get. But what you can see is that even if we don't paint the colors into the leaf, we already have an interesting composition going on. I could put information about, like, this is a strawberry guava leaf. I'm blanking on the species name right now. It's not in the Psidium genus, which is most of the guavas, or like the official guava. It is, I want to say, like Cattleya, but I can't remember. So I'll just write strawberry guava. I was going to do bubble letters, but strawberry is a really long word, and it would take me a little bit of a long time to write strawberry guava. Leaf. What's another important piece of data? Another important piece of data for this would be the date. So it is November 26th. 26th of November. That's an important piece of data. On Instagram, oh, Yamila's turning in. Oh, Yamila got the Jaguar Journal. That's awesome. In Australia already. That's so cool. Thanks for sharing. And this is, I am currently using watercolor. Gouache would be fun for this as well, but for me, I am much better at matching colors exactly with watercolor than with gouache. And I think in general, watercolor is more precise for very accurate color matching. That is a great question. Thanks for asking that, Yamila, on Instagram. Oh, James on YouTube has a really good point as well. And these sometimes change, but yes, there are climate designations. There's these different letters. I think the USDA might have done this for North America, where there's different climate zones, and they talk about like what plants can be grown in what zone based on that. This is a subtropical plant, and I don't know what zone I am in currently in San Diego, but that is a good point. Yes, very good points. Rainfall per year would also be a good one. Thanks for pointing those both out. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to paint these colors onto the leaf and see what we get. And I'll share one other trick about these colors, which are basically complementary colors. We don't want this to end up looking like a Christmas thing, which is a problem when you have reds and greens. You have this tendency to create a sort of Christmas color palette, and that's not actually what we want. We want something slightly more subtle and more sophisticated. Not saying that Christmas is not sophisticated, but the red and green colors are not very sophisticated. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to start with the green, and I'm going to go in here and just do these sort of patches. And I think there's a couple places where I'm going to overlap the red and the green to create this brown, such as along the vein right there in the middle. So let's try to get some slightly random patches. It does look like they are pretty random, but they are a little bit going along the lines of where the veins are, and there's less at the tip, and maybe bigger patches towards the middle. Okay, so I'm gonna let that part dry before I do the red. And what I'll do now is I will add some information. So for example, one good thing to do in nature journaling is to use information that other people supply and to credit them. So for example, James asked about climate designation. There's another name for it. I think they call them just zones. And I'll put that in apostrophes there. And rainfall. And I personally think that the combination of words and images makes everything look more interesting. Okay, now I'm going to do the red, which for me is basically just this straight pigment here, which is quinacridone sienna. These are Daniel Smith colors. And I'm going to overlap the green where the stem is because the stem or the rachis looks brown to me. And it should, oops, it's a little bit too saturated, but I can fix that later. But ideally, green over brown, red over green would make sort of brown. But for the rest of this, I'm going to try not to overlap too much. So this is one of those situations where, depending on how perfectionist you are, you need to practice some self-awareness and decide, how precise you want to be about this. And when it comes to textures and these sort of color sort of variations like this, sometimes you can experiment with different, like wet on wet. In this case, I let the green dry almost completely before coming in here with the red, but you could also experiment with letting them bleed into each other with wet on wet and see what different types of textures you could create. Sometimes the best way to do that, especially if you're a recovering perfectionist like myself, sometimes the best way to do that is to create a little area, a little separate area where you do all of those experiments. So just to show you what that would look like, I could, in one spot away from my leaf drawing, even though I didn't invest that much in drawing that leaf, I could create a little zone here where I do like 3 different patches of the Serpentine Genuine, and then I do 3 different things with them. So on one of them, I could drop in quinacridone sienna while it's still wet and see what that does. And then on the other ones, I could try different things. Does that make sense? And if you're really perfectionist, you might need to write experiments next to it, and that way you're sort of giving yourself permission to try different things down here. Now, what do you notice about all of this we've done very quickly? And what do you notice? I personally, what I'm noticing is that there is sort of this aesthetic that is starting to take shape. Even though all of these things we've done in a sort of quick and messy sort of way, there is an aesthetic that is starting to coalesce here just from this accumulation of marks and colors and words. And so I think that is really my main point with this video today, is that it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can actually look good and be fun and be a learning experience without getting too uptight about any one drawing being perfect. And that's definitely better than not doing any drawing or any nature journaling at all. Okay, that is a perfect segue. So that's all I'm gonna say about fall leaves for now. You could spend forever. You could obsess about all the details. You could get really, really into it. But for now, that's all I'm going to do for fall leaves. And I'm going to get into a couple more topics and tricks and tips right now. Fall leaves, done. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is complexity and choice of subject. So this is an example of a leaf that is the botanical term for this is dissected or compound. It's not exactly a compound leaf. Dissected is more I think the technical term. I wouldn't even try drawing this personally. If I had to draw this plant, I would use an approach where I don't have to draw every single one of these. And I would think about it very hard and practice a lot of self-awareness before I started drawing something like this. There's probably thousands of little pointy things in here, and they do have a very specific organization. If you don't get that right, it's not gonna look correct. So what I recommend is using your ability to choose and choose not to draw this type of leaf. If you have some reason why you really need to draw this and nature journal this particular species, that's good. But I just want you to go into it with the awareness that this is a very, very challenging thing to draw because of the complexity. This is probably the kind of thing that would like a computer would have a lot of difficulty with as well. There's just a lot of complexity going on there. So we're going to put that aside. And then on the other end of the spectrum, this without the colors is very low complexity, and maybe that's boring to you, but just to understand that there is this spectrum of complexity in leaves, and some of these are going to be extremely challenging to draw. Now, something that's sort of in between might be this leaf right here. So let's talk about a couple strategies, and let's see if we could fit this in right here. I'm going to check on Instagram real quick to see if there's any more comments or questions on there. I don't see any comments or questions right now. So let's start getting ready for this next one. So I think this is an honorable choice right here in terms of complexity. It's a challenge, but it's not too crazy. And I'm going to show you two different ways that you could approach this. Let's start with the first one, which is basically, the other thing is I'll mention right now, because this is related to complexity, is three-dimensionality versus two-dimensionality. So I picked this leaf a while ago and intentionally let it wilt a little bit, and it's making it flatter. So one strategy for nature journaling leaves is you could press them. You can actually smash them in your book, or you could pick them early and let them wilt. Other leaves are very three-dimensional, like this. This is going to be hard because of how three-dimensional it is. That's going to make it harder to draw. The three-dimensionality is complexity. So this is a little bit flat. That'll make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to show you a couple ways you could trace it. Tracing is a great strategy. So one way that you could trace plants is with the shadow. So you can actually hold the leaf like this and trace the shadow. That might actually be a good way to simplify the three-dimensionality of the fig leaf, for example. So let's just show what that would look like over here really quickly. So if I held the leaf like this, I could trace the shadow. And this can be really fun. Even you don't have to pick the leaves off of the tree. it can be a really fun strategy. So I'm just gonna go. I will use ink. It can be really fun sitting underneath trees and trying to trace the shadows. It's a good warm up, or if you don't know what to do, you're with people who are afraid of drawing, this can be a really good strategy. Look at how fast that was, and I can get a cool pattern. One thing you can do is you could just fill this in with a solid wash, and that can just be a fun artistic little thing to do. So that's tracing from a shadow. With this other leaf, I'll show you a different strategy. You could try to go around this entire leaf and trace it very, very carefully and in a very detailed way. The other thing you can do is just put dots in certain places. So I'm going to show you how to do the dots technique. I think that's going to work right there. Oh, Eriko is here. Oh, Hosheli was here also. Welcome. We've got people in Australia, people in Brazil, people in Japan. We've got people from all over the world. Post in the comments where you are tuning in from. That'd be really fun to hear. People on the East Coast of North America. Let's see where else people are tuning in from. Okay, so let's get into this one right here. So this technique is a different type of tracing. So we talked about tracing the shadow. Now I'm going to show you how to use dots. So sometimes if you don't have as much time or you want to go fast, you can just put little dots. And these are sort of like guides. And this can help you deal with the complexity. So you might use them at the parts that stick out the furthest and the parts that are inside the furthest. You can also combine it with other types of tracing, like being more following the line. But just by using dots, it's a little bit faster. And you get the basics. And then you could go back to drawing it from eye. If you wanted to do a botanical illustration, a very precise scientific illustration, you could spend 3 days on this single leaf. But what I'm trying to show you today is just how to make it easy and not overthink it. And this way we can at least get the dimensions, and we can still look at the leaf afterwards and draw it in, but at least we get the basic proportions. There's a little bit of overlap here. I'm going to try to stay true to that. It's going to be a little bit weird. Another weird complex overlap here. Hopefully I will be able to disentangle that when I come around to doing the final drawing. So I'm a recovering perfectionist. This is the kind of thing that would have freaked me out before. And what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to do it quickly and not worrying about making it perfect. Sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. And if you think so much about how to make something perfect, you can never make something good because you never start. You spend too much time thinking about how to make it perfect and how hard it's going to be, how difficult it will be to make it perfect. And then you start second guessing everything. So right now what we're doing is we're trying to not make it perfect. We're trying to make it good. Good enough. Okay, so now you can see what the dots look like. You can barely see it on camera. I use this gray pen, a gray zebra pen. Can you see those dots? Can barely see those dots. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it over here, and I don't want that bottom drawing to throw me off, so I'm going to actually put a piece of white paper underneath that. Good thing I have paper lying around everywhere. So I'm going to hold the leaf here because I'm still going to look at the leaf while I draw. Because I didn't get everything perfect. I didn't get all of the details. Yay, let me know where you're tuning in from. We've got people so far in Brazil, Japan, Australia. All right, now let's try to finalize this here without getting too perfectionist. Woo, okay, let's go. So I've got my, I think this is the Tombow Fudenosuke, which is my favorite drawing pen right now. I want to get some of these points here. There's an interesting fold. I'm not sure if I'm going to show that or not. So there's probably a lot of other senses too that we're not including. So for example, what does this leaf taste like or smell like? You could write those things down on your page. Where was it growing? What does the rest of the plant look like? We don't want to isolate this from the rest of nature because, or if we do, we just want to be self-aware of it because that is something that we have inherited from the sort of Western scientific tradition and this long lineage that we have, whether we like it or not, in nature journaling, we've inherited a lot of this sort of Western Judeo-Christian scientific worldview, and that influences the way we nature journal, and we often have this tendency of separating things from the rest of the environment, and that is not being more objective. That is a perspective. Yay, we've got someone tuning in here from New Hampshire, so northeastern US. I'll share Cindy's comment on the screen there. Wow, all of the trees' leaves have fallen, except one type of oak and presumably evergreen trees as well. So leaves are, the falling of leaves is a really big deal in some of these parts of the world. So it's a very interesting thing. I think I messed up the way those overlapped. Oh, no, I didn't. I just lost track of where I was here. I should mention, there's also tropical ecosystems that have deciduous trees. So I'm about to be going in a couple days to the seasonally dry tropical forest in northwestern Costa Rica. There are tropical ecosystems where the trees lose their leaves as well. So it's not just northern and southern temperate climates outside of the tropics. It's important to point that out. Thanks for sharing, Cindy. All right, so this leaf is pretty complex, but we're gonna stick to our methodology here with the dots and see what kind of result we get. I think I missed a couple dots there. Another thing that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So after tracing, there is an even easier technique which is putting the actual leaf. This isn't possible in all situations, but squishing the actual leaf into your nature journal, onto your pages. So pressed plants, pressed leaves, taping leaves. I'll show you one real quick and dirty way to do that in a second with packing tape, which is up there with it's up there with masking fluid as one of the least sexy of art supplies. And it's probably not very archival. I don't think it's archival. I lost track of which leaf I'm on. So if you thought this was a dandelion, or if this reminded you of a dandelion, then you are very close, or a thistle. This is in the Asteraceae, the same family, and this particular one is, I believe it's in the, I believe it's a Chicoreum genus, Chicoreum intybus, which is the chicory genus. So endives, chicory, it's probably in your salad mix that you've eaten. A lot of bitter plants that are edible and make cool flowers, often blue flowers for this genus. Closely related to dandelion, but not in the same genus. Sometimes it's called Italian dandelion, but it's not in the same genus. Dandelion is Taraxacum, and this is Chicoreum. Very cool. As you can tell, it's I'm really into these. The whole thistle and dandelion tribes of the Asteraceae family are my favorites. So I've got the outline. I feel like that outline's actually pretty good. Hugo is showing a smiley face, so I assume that means they like it. Hugo, let us know where you're tuning in from, what part of the world. We've got leaves from people looking at leaves all over the world tonight, so let us know where you're tuning in from. We've got Brazil, Japan, Australia, Eastern North America. I'm going to write leaves up here. So what you can see is that even though I'm being very sloppy and letting go of my perfectionism, we're starting to develop a little bit of an aesthetic here on the page. And I think that is really cool, because that's what I want to do, is empower all of you that this doesn't have to be that hard, that you can just start with some pretty basic stuff and some really simple techniques, and actually develop a page that starts to come together aesthetically from a bunch of smaller pieces. Awesome. Hugo is representing San Francisco. So San Francisco, California. So the western coast of North America. Awesome. What kind of leaves? What's going on with leaves in San Francisco right now? Okay, so now the tricky part is I have to decide whether or not I'm going to try to show some of this interior stuff going on, which is a lot more complex. And if you're dealing with watercolor, the really hard part is that these veins are a paler color and there's a really dark color around them. So I have to make a choice here, because I could probably spend hours trying to do this. Like if I were doing a botanical illustration with colored pencil, I could probably spend hours on this Chicoreum leaf right here. I'll write that. I think it's spelled like this, Chicoreum intybus. I don't think I'm gonna do that. Ooh, ginkgo fruit. Ginkgo leaves. Yes, ginkgo leaves would be really, really fun. Thanks for sharing that. That would be awesome. Okay, so I think I'm actually gonna skip even trying to draw anything on the inside of this. That feels too intimidating right now. So let's go on to the next thing, which is pressing and tape. So if you're feeling sort of like something would be really challenging, like drawing the inside of this leaf, there's so much complexity. Like I mentioned before, managing complexity is a big part of this, and knowing and being self-aware about what you want to bite off and what you don't want to bite off. So one trick is when you have an extremely complex leaf like this, and you know that it's going to be really hard to draw, one thing you can do is just press it into your journal instead. That could be your criteria for deciding what to draw and what to press. And so in this case, I'm not, well, I'll do a little bit of this one to show you the technique. So we'll take a little bit of this, and we'll also do this, and we'll use a technique that really simplifies it and makes it so we don't have to draw it. We can make notes next to it, or we could draw small aspects of it, or do color notes next to it, but we don't have to draw the whole thing. So let me get this special art supply for this. I think I have some here. I do. Like I said, this is one of the least sexy art supplies. Sometimes it smells weird. It makes an annoying sound. So if you're very sensitive to sounds, you might want to turn your volume down, because this does make a very, I wouldn't say abrasive, but I would say a very strong sound that some people don't like. This is packing tape, so this is what they use for packages. It has a lot of uses besides returning stuff to Amazon or whatever, or Christmas presents or things like that. And for some reason, this one's being really annoying about. This is one of the worst things about it, is if you can't get it to all star. Wow, that's really bad. Look at that. That is like a nightmare. If anyone is OCD out there, you might want to turn away right now, because this might be triggering to some people. Look at how that's peeling up. Ooh, this is really, I don't know why this is the worst I've ever. Wow, I've never seen it that bad. Okay, I'm gonna get my other. I think I have another one here. That's terrible. I think that's gonna cause me nightmares tonight. Please tell me I have more. Okay. Okay, see this one, luckily, you can see this is the correct way to do it, is there's these things that are supposed to hold. Does this one not have that? It does, but the design is slightly different. Interesting. So this one, the tape was properly positioned onto these little sticky things here that keep it from doing that terrible shredding. So brace yourself for the sound. I'm gonna rip this part off because this part is not perfect. I want a little bit more perfection for this imperfect thing that I'm about to do. So this is you could have a plant press like I do. I do have a plant press where I press things very professionally, let them dry out, and then I put them into my nature journal and put Mod Podge or other sealants over them. But if you want to be quick and dirty, this is the quick and dirty way to do this. And I'm going to show you right now. You just take packing tape. You could have this in your nature journal kit. And as long as it's legal, or you consider it ethical where you are, and to do this, and you're not going to transport diseases across international boundaries and infect some island with a new disease, you can just take some packing tape like this, and watch this. This is amazing. Boom. Now you don't have to draw that leaf at all. You don't have to draw that fennel leaf at all. It's now in your nature journal. And yeah, there are things about this that could go wrong. Like there could be some molding later on. And I've shown that on the show before, on the Nature Journal show, and the repercussions. But it's worth experimenting with, because I think a lot of times what we do is we don't try things because we're worried about what might happen. and we never know what's the worst case scenario, what's the worst thing that could actually happen. And so, if you showed this to my past self from like 10 years ago, I would freak out about this because this just looks so horrendous as a recovering perfectionist. But if you are in that camp as well, I think trying this kind of stuff is actually really good for your mental health, and just realizing that um, it's possible to do things like this, and it kind of can loosen you up a little bit. And sometimes it's really good to loosen yourself up and know what's actually possible. And if you need to, you could do a little bit of journaling in here, a little bit of ranting, a little bit of like release. And I could write something in here like, my inner perfectionist is trying to freak out. So this could actually be, this could be therapeutic right here. My inner perfectionist is trying to freak out. And now I'm going to write Fennel. This is Fennel. I definitely did not want to draw. I definitely did not want to draw that complexity. And this is a persimmon leaf. I believe it's a Fuyu persimmon leaf. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit here without showing my negligee that I'm currently wearing. Let's zoom out a little bit here and look at what we've been doing. The whole point and my goal for tonight is to empower you that nature journaling doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to be a great artist or be able to draw things perfectly. You don't need 10 uninterrupted hours to do an OCD drawing of every single frond of this fennel leaf. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of ways you can approach this that are fun, that provide a lot of the benefits of doing that 10-hour drawing without chewing off all of your fingernails. There's a lot of things you can do involving color, involving words, involving tracing, involving even this terrible tape. There's a lot that you can do in a short amount of time that will provide a lot of the benefits of nature journaling. So if you don't know what to nature journal, just find a leaf and start from there. Thanks to everybody joining in from all over the world. This has been really fun. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Nature Journal Show. In fact, next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that might be the last episode of season 5 of the Nature Journal Show, and potentially the last episode of the Nature Journal Show for all time. So stay tuned. Thanks for all of my Patreon members for supporting the show, and I will see you next week. Bye.